Hello everybody, I'm Don Counts and we are here with Dick Farrar. And Dick, let's tell us who we have today and tell us who we have.
We have Pat Welsh with us, a member of our group of what we call Jocks. And Pat's been around Tullahoma for quite a number of years and on the city school board for a number of years, alderman. So we've got a top dog with us today.
Pat, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, my family moved to Tullahoma during the Arnold Center explosion in the 50s. And other than going to school and coaching and teaching at Battleground Academy for 3 years, I've been in Tullahoma the rest of my life. Played football at the high school in the early 70s. And probably wasn't a very good player, but it certainly meant a lot to me. I went to a junior college in Virginia after high school, and I been knocked out twice pretty good in high school and once really bad in this junior college in Virginia. And the neurosurgeon said it was time to stop, and I got really interested in coaching. And I've helped in Tullahoma for a little bit in the early 70s, and then when I student taught, I helped at Lynchburg with Red Roberts, who's a great guy and a great football coach. Eventually did a really good job in Franklin County, and left in the mid-70s to go into business, my father-in-law's business, which was Builder Supply in Tullahoma, and that's how I met Dick. He was at Williams Lumber, and I've always admired him. And at some point in the early 90s, I got involved with kids wrestling. I had coached was the head coach at Battleground Academy for 2 years before we came back, and that pretty well sums me up. As Dick said, I was been on the school board for 25 years and had one brief term as alderman, which I wished I hadn't. I really enjoyed the school business as opposed to city business.
Pat, upon graduation from Tullahoma High School in the spring of '72, you enrolled at Tennessee Tech and graduated 4 years later with a BS degree in secondary education, social sciences. When you arrived in Cookeville, did you have your eyes set on becoming a teacher, or did you go in another direction with your major during your 4 years at Tennessee Tech?
One quick correction, it doesn't matter, I wouldn't think a whole lot. Couldn't play football any longer, I finished up at Motlow. That was 2 or 3 quarters, and then transferred to Tech for the last 2 or 2.5 years. And that's what I wanted to do. I wanted to be a high school football coach and at that time. And yes, I was very much interested in the education department.
In addition to football, did you play any other sports in high school? And
No.
Did you attempt to play any varsity sports while a student at Tennessee Tech?
No, my playing career was as limited as it was over with after those concussions. And the football coach when I was a junior was Bill Baker, who wasn't 26, 27 years old. He had just played at UT, and I mean, he was magnetic. And he had an off-season program, and they had started a wrestling program in the winter, but I had no intention of getting involved in anything other than Coach Baker's off-season program. I wished that I had wrestled too, but whatever Coach Baker suggested, I was lined up, and about 60 other young men were lined up to do what he asked to.
Okay. Out of college in '76, you became involved with Battleground Academy in Franklin, Tennessee. Take us through those years that you were there.
All right. I was really fortunate to get that job. BGA's got a great academic reputation, and at times it's had some real good athletic success. The John Oxley was the head coach and the athletic director at BGA at the time, and Red Roberts called him after I had helped them, and I got that job, and I really enjoyed it. We were running out of athletes towards the second or third year that I was there. There was so many small private schools that got started in the Nashville area in the 70s, and they got just enough academic credibility by the end where they were pilfering off athletes for sure, and it became tougher for the BGAs and the MBAs of the world to make do. My first year there, we had a good team, beat Ryan and beat MBA. Rob Fessmeyer, that played at your alma mater, Mississippi State, was the quarterback and a great defensive back. I coached secondary. And there were 2 or 3 other really good high school players that I got to coach there it was a really enjoyable experience.
In your 3 years as a coach teacher at BGA, were you aware of the tension that existed and the friction that resulted between the Nashville schools and private schools?
Oh yeah, it got worse a little bit after I had finished, and I can understand now that I'm a school board member. I can understand the position. It's the difference in facilities now is just really unbelievable. I took our kids group, which would have had second graders up to like 8th graders, to McCauley several times to practice with some of their kids in their gym, and there's nobody, a public school cannot afford what they've got. And then on top of that, it wasn't long after I was at BGA that Baylor won a state championship in tennis, and not only did they not have a tennis player from the state of Tennessee, they didn't have a tennis player from the United States of America. Every one of them was foreign. And they probably need to be separate. And I think that's probably where they need to stay.
Today, you are an honored and recognized amateur wrestling expert. Since you didn't wrestle in high school, what did you go through to educate yourself and develop the acumen to bring your knowledge up to an acceptable level?
I don't know that I'd deem myself an expert, first of all, but the first high school state tournament in Tennessee did not happen until 1961. So it really still is relatively a new sport, in my opinion. And they're outside of UT Chattanooga, and MTSU at one time had a college wrestling program, but that didn't last but 6 or 7 years. So there wasn't a whole lot of knowledge. And when it first got started, Chattanooga was a little bit ahead of Nashville and the rest of the state, and remained that way for a while. And most of the people that coached wrestling in Nashville were assistant football coaches that somebody said, you're going to be the coach, which is what happened to me at Battleground. We had a wrestling coach that left to go to NBA, and the AD, who was my boss, the football coach, he pretty well told me I was going to be the wrestling coach. But they sent me, he and the headmaster sent me to a clinic in Iowa that Dan Gable ran for a week just for coaches. And that area of the world was so far ahead of Tennessee in the South, and particularly at that point that a week with Dan Gable, I felt like I was on par knowledge-wise with about 75% of the high school coaches. And it didn't take long. You get beat a couple times, you make a real effort to find out why you got beat. And if you're going to survive, you'll get better.
On a secondary school level, wrestling coaches are regarded as a breed unto themselves. One thing that usually sets them apart is the camaraderie. When coaches gather, they are known for spending hours sharing knowledge on technique, strategy, and just about anything else that can help colleagues do a better job. Can you explain how that works and how genuinely helpful other coaches are in assisting the development of those with less experience?
I think wrestling is still growing, and especially at the girls level. It wasn't long ago. It was the fastest growing sport nationally in high schools was girls wrestling, and there was always a natural desire and a collegiality from wrestling coaches to help to grow the sport, to get other people's interested, and to help with the techniques that they actually wanted more competition and wanted to help and wanted to grow the sport. And Tennessee is much, much stronger now than it was 30 and 40 years ago. And UT Chattanooga has been at times in the national tournament, NCAA tournaments, finished top 20, top 25, something like that. And they just signed 5 transfers, which I assume was the portal, that wrestled in high school in Tennessee, but one of them went to Iowa State. And I can't remember exactly where the other 4 were, but they were in national caliber programs. And UTC is going to be somebody to be reckoned with after a while. And there's the wrestling community is proud of Tennessee getting better.
Okay. Having been involved in wrestling over the years and coaching and setting up Tullahoma High School with a wrestling program, tell us a little bit about your experience in with the TSSAA and how that program is has been built in the wrestling in the TSSAA.
I think wrestling in the state, and that of course TSSAA regulates it, was helped when Ronnie Carter became the executive director. He'd been one of the ones that didn't have a whole lot of wrestling background, but when he became the head coach at Overton, he didn't enjoy getting beat, and it doesn't take long if you want to compete. You got to get better, and Ronnie did a great job. And probably don't have enough time today to tell of something that he did at a really competitive regional finals, which at the time the region was all of Middle Tennessee, Nashville, Murfreesboro, everybody. And Overton was one of the top 2 programs with the privates wrestling with us at that time. Them and Ryan would have been by far the best. And when Ronnie got into the administration side of the TSSAA, that helped wrestling. And he was in charge, I'm sure, of the state meet while he was an assistant. And when he was executive director, he looked after wrestling. That was where he came from.
Okay. 3 years into your BGA experience, you headed home to Tullahoma to enter the family's lumber business. A decade or so later, your passion for wrestling was revived when your help was requested in starting a Tullahoma Youth Wrestling Program. Not only did this club thrive, Tullahoma High School wrestling team began to show results. Talk about what Tullahoma Wrestling Club meant to you, how and why at first, and some of the successes it experienced.
Some of the early part of it, to be completely honest, personally was selfish. I envisioned my sons, I had 2 sons, and I envisioned them being, when they were first born, they're going to be 6 foot, 185, run a 4.25 40 or something, and play for either Alabama or Tennessee or something. And the older one, when he went for his 6-month checkup, he not only was low on the percentile on the growth chart, he wasn't on the chart. And the second one, we thought he was going to be the big guy, and we called him the big one for a long time. And he went for his 6-month checkup, and he made the chart, but it was at 5%. So the older one, when he came to the high school, as a freshman, he weighed 85 pounds. And there wasn't a whole lot of need for Coach Olive. He didn't need 85-pound players. And so if he was going to do something, it was probably going to be distance running or wrestling, which he got involved with both. And wrestling for him was a godsend because he ended up being a state champion. And Ken Hagan is who you referred to, that he had wrestled at, I believe, Oregon State, or maybe Portland State, I'm not sure which, but he was good enough to have made the NCAA tournament. And he had a son that he wanted to get started, and he asked if I would be interested, and I was really interested, and he said, "Do you know of anybody else?" And I knew a young man who was probably in the 3rd or 4th grade time named Matt Sweeten, and ended up being a 3-time state champion at the high school level. And I knew he was a tough kid. I didn't know if he could wrestle or not, but after I watched him about 2 times at practice, I knew he was going to be, he had really God-given talent. And with those 3 started, and we went to a few tournaments in Chattanooga, and it just gradually grew. We never had more than probably 25 or 30 at a time, but at one point we would have had people from Nashville coming. I had from Overton, a boy named Casey Brewster, it was ended up being a 2-time state champion. Ken Hagan's son, JT, ended up going to McCauley, but he ended up being a 3-time state champion. Matt Sweeten was a 3-timer. My son won once and was in the finals another time. They were all there at the same time, and they're all about the same weight. So the practice room was really, really strong. And it just kind of exploded. We had enough success where other people found out about it and wanted to be involved, and it really grew. And we went. Tullahoma started wrestling in '69, I believe, and we had not had a state champion until 1999. So 30 years there's no state champions, and after that we've had 4 or 5, and one of them was a 3-timer, and it's made a big difference. And it's a little akin. Wrestling is a little akin to offensive line work. There's no substitute for experience. And the earlier you have some experience, the better you're going to be. And when you start in the 2nd and 3rd grade, you've got a real advantage on somebody that starts as a sophomore or freshman in high school. And that's where we've helped the high school. It's not so much what I did, it's just allowing them to have a chance to compete and experience what wrestling is at the age and the time that the ones from Chattanooga primarily were. Now, we were the first program in Middle Tennessee, basically, but it didn't take long before the other ones, especially in Williamson County and Nashville areas, started programs when they saw what it was doing for us.
Many of those wrestlers that you coach proved to be ultra achievers as adults in their chosen business and profession careers. This had to be among the most gratifying rewards that you can have as a mentor.
It is the most gratifying because I had a picture that had I think 18 on it, and that had been the 3rd or 4th year that we had a team or a group. And that had 2 medical doctors, a lawyer, 2 PhD scientists, 2 master's degree in science, and just, you couldn't find 18 other kids in Tullahoma at that time randomly and then have them turn. Wrestling helped the discipline and so forth in that. And we had one that I like to take a little bit of credit. We had a high school golf state champion in the room at the time. And I never will forget when I reading the next day when I got the paper out to find out what happened in the state tournament, because that's a 2-day tournament, and I knew he was close on the first day. But when he made the turn at Henry Horton, was where the tournament was that year, and the first holes of the back nine are really, really tough. And he was like either 2 or 3 strokes behind. And he told the reporter that he felt like to have a chance, he's going to have to birdie 2 or 3 of the first 4 or 5 holes. Well, he ended up birdieing 3 or 4 of those, of the first 4 holes, and ended up winning. I really felt like some of that came from the toughness that he got from the wrestling program. And there wasn't he didn't wrestle but just a couple of years before he realized his probably future was in golf. But he was one of the best kids wrestler in the state when he went to golf.
Are you still in touch with some of those people that you coached along the way? And
Oh,
do
yeah.
you hear from them? And
Oh, yeah.
can you tell us a story or two?
I see Matt Sweetener, talk to him on the phone probably once every 3 or 4 weeks, and our families were always close, and they will always be close. And I see the parents probably more than I see the kids. Casey Brewster that wrestled at Overton that I was talking about, his dad was one of the best referees in the state, so I see him quite a bit. And I bump into him.
Okay. From time to time, we hear about someone in the public eye wanting to give back. Your position in the community would seem to put you in the category of someone who has given back. You have served on the Tullahoma City Council, Tullahoma School Board, Rotarian for over 40 years, and been a leader in the Fellowship of Christian Athletes for more than 4 decades. Is public service part of your DNA?
I just think that's what I should be.
It should also be noted that public service for you has been largely reflected in some of the groups catering to young people. You have a long history of coaching in the Tullahoma Youth Football League, the Tullahoma Little League, and Tullahoma Church Basketball League. To stay involved in those activities for as long as you have, it seems to be a cross between a calling and an addiction. Please explain how big a part of your life it is, the joy you get from it, doing it, and why you have continued for so long. Long question.
Yeah, it was, Dick, and it also makes me be thoughtful about it. I really think after a while, after I'd been, the wrestling I was able to do for about a little over 30 years till my back got to the point where I just absolutely could not get down on the mat and get up very easily. But the success that they began to have when they got in college and out of college is what drove the last part, the last decade or so. It to see them grow and to see them become fruitful and successful was more of a factor than trying to win.
Okay. You have a center named after you called the Welsh Wrestling Center. What did it mean to you to have something like that named after you and your family?
I don't want to talk too long on that because it'll get me emotional, but and I wouldn't have been happy with that if they made an emphasis that it was about my family. My wife gave up an awful lot, and her and 2 or 3 other of the mothers ran the hospitality rooms at tournaments that were here, and which was at one time was a lot of them. I really enjoyed it, and I enjoyed the success that we had. But again, what happened after is what means so much. We had one that young man that's moved back to town, retired from Marine Corps, that went to and he wasn't an ultra successful wrestler, but he was fair. There's no question about that. And he went to the Naval Academy, and then the Marines is part of the Navy, so that you can go into the Marine Corps after you graduate from the Naval Academy. And he ended up, when we were in the Middle East, every ordnance that flew into Fallujah, he directed that. You know, it's just story after story of the success of the kids that come through there is what is the real reward.
Right, okay, good. If there is more evidence needed to affirm the esteem in which you are held, one might note that you have been named Citizen of the Year by both the Tullahoma Chamber of Commerce and the Tullahoma News. Other validating moments in your treasure trove have been received on a broader scale. In 2017, you were inducted in the Tennessee chapter of the National Federation of Wrestling Hall of Fame. And in 2022, the Tennessee AAU Wrestling Hall of Fame enshrined you as a member in its inaugural class. What can you say about the work that you have done and the remarkable number of awards that you have received and what they mean to you?
Pretty humbling. I've been to several of the banquets in Nashville when they installed classes of the National Hall of Fame, which is in the archives is in Stillwater, Oklahoma, right on the campus of Oklahoma State. And I had so much admiration for the people that were in that it never was ever, truly never even a thought process that I would one day be there. And some of that, just being realistic, they were coaches primarily that had been involved with UT Chattanooga's program or MTSU's program or really, really high-end high school. There wasn't anybody in the youth program. But the leaders, I found out later, decided that they need to recognize some people that were involved with the youth. And there was one guy who has since passed away that was involved in the Brentwood area with their youth program when they first got started. And we got in at the same time, and when we got called, both of us said, I don't want to be in until he's in. And not knowing that we were both getting a phone call at the same time and both looking after the other guy. Mm-hmm. And I was on the road selling building materials at the time, and I had to pull off the road. It floored me and really was a real meaningful time.
Mm. Pat, I've known you for quite a few years, and I've always admired your integrity and your character, and also that of your family. And with a slew of accolades, the opinions of others are very apparent. But just from a personal standpoint, how would you like to be remembered?
Somebody that cared about others. And I think that I don't aspire to anything more than that.
Pat, thank you very much.
Thank you, Don.
Appreciate it.
And thank you, Dick.
Great job, Pat.
Thank you.